Well, lo and behold, 24 hours later, on December 23rd, the Tax Kings notice for a separate special called meeting, 24 hours before the scheduled interviews, which is Monday the 29th, today. And this had a lot of people thinking, what is going on? Why do we need two special called meetings within 24 hours of one another for the exact same meeting purpose, to go into closed session to discuss personnel matters? And I'm not privy to anything between the city council and what they were thinking, but I know myself, I would be a little skeptical about the tax kings and what their plans were. Because the tax team, they're some meddling kids, right? They're out there meddling. They're meddling, creating messes for everybody. So this morning, they go into closed session, and I'm not privy to the discussion, but it is my understanding that they went into closed session, and then less than 20 minutes later, they came out of closed session and did a public vote to appoint the geriatric city manager. Now, they didn't do their candidate interviews then. They didn't notify the three candidates that were coming to do the interviews. They didn't tell them that. They didn't tell them to be here early, right? And when they come out of closed session, they make a motion, the tax team does, to vote to appoint the geriatric as the interim city manager at $2,000 a week. With two dissenting votes, it passes with the tax team votes. Suckelberger, Messy Max, and Sloppy Joe all vote for the geriatric to be the interim city manager, while the other two council members vote in opposition. So now the city looks like a bunch of fools, because they've got out-of-town candidates who, again, were provided by a nonpartisan list of a governmental resource to provide interim services and do interviews with all 5 city council members and Madam Mayor, right? But the tax team couldn't do that. They didn't believe the geriatric would be able to make that interview process, right? And we'll go into why that is. Yeah. A separate video with the geriatric's lack of qualifications and how he's been able to weasel himself into a city manager job before in the past is going to come to light. And we're going to talk about that, but we got more pressing matters tonight. And I want you to know what I, as a political scientist and an attorney, find to be the most repugnant of the tax king's actions this morning with voting for the geriatric city manager. And that is the fact that the geriatric city manager financially contributed to Messy Max's campaign this campaign season. And on election day, the geriatric was out at the voting precinct at the fire station where I voted. I saw it with my own 2 eyes, and he had on the Messy Max official campaign name tag and was handing out tax team leaflets to voters at the precinct, actively campaigning for candidates. And those candidates are now his boss. And those candidates refuse to let the geriatric stand on his own merits, stand in an interview process that was open to all members of city council and Madam Mayor. And we have to ask ourselves, why would that be? But y'all, that's one of those mysteries that we already know. We got Scooby-Doo pulling off the mask and showing us who the corrupt people are, right? Already in front of us. Messy Max, Sloppy Joe, and the Suckelberger. Because again, These are the three stooges that ran on transparency, right? They want to save everybody money. They want a transparent government. They were all big mad about the Facebook social media posts, all that, right? All big mad, want government transparency. But here they are, not willing to let their campaign cronies be involved with a competitive search. That's the tax kings. That's what the government they're providing you with. Cronyism. Awarding their campaign workers. Awarding their campaign contributor. Right? Because Messy Max didn't say, you know what? I mean, I'm unsure as to whether or not this is unethical, but at the very minimum, there's an appearance of impropriety, so I'm going to recuse myself from this vote. No, he didn't do that. The tax kings didn't do that. What they did is they usurped the actual search process because they knew they had the votes. It didn't matter who the best qualified candidate was. All that mattered is that the geriatric needed to be put into power, and he is. Because the reality is, at no point did Messy Max say, you know what, y'all, since he did financially contribute to my campaign, the geriatric, and he was out there geriatrically campaigning for me with my Messy Max name tag and handing out all of our little leaflets. We should probably just look like at least that we're going to go through the motions on Tuesday. You know, we don't want to hinder ourselves with reading all these resumes, and we actually have no intentions of doing it. But it would be best if I'm not going to be a man of ethics and the appearance of propriety, right? By recusing myself, at least we need to go through the motions of interviewing these candidates that have been scheduled to come and interview with us and the rest of the city council, right? But that's not what the tax kings wanted. No, 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 no. The tax kings needed to get their buddy in, right? The tax kings they're not fulfilling anybody's campaign promises but their own, right? And those promises aren't to the city. They ain't done nothing about taxes. Nothing about taxes. They've spent some money for y'all. That's what they've done. So, y'all, we've entered a new era here in the city of Washington. No longer do we need candidates for key employment positions to be qualified. No, y'all, all you need to do is write checks to the city council member campaigns and make sure you're available in October and November to be out there campaigning for them, right? Because that's how you get jobs now with the tax king right there. And I'm sure that's how they're going to get other contracts, right? That's what we're going to vote for with the tax kings. And Sloppy Joe's up in these comments already sharing the news story saying it's a home run for the city. The geriatric's appointment as the city manager. Home run for the city. No, Sloppy Joe, it's not a home run. That's a steal. That's what y'all did. You stole. Because a home run would have been if your geriatric candidate would have been able to cut the mustard with the actual interview process. But y'all didn't even believe in him. You didn't even give him the chance to prove himself. So that says a lot about what you think about the geriatric, and it says a lot about why you did it. Because the reality is you weren't ever looking for the best qualified candidate. You were just looking to fulfill on those campaign promises, right? Right. And listen, a lot of y'all are out here like, how did this happen? What is going on? This isn't what they said that they were going to do, the tax kings. Well, this is the reality. This is who they are. They've shown you. They've shown you exactly who they are. So now you need to hold them accountable. You need to go to every city council meeting. You need to take your 3 minutes if you're an individual or your 5 minutes if you're representing a group. And you need to start fighting for the integrity of our local government. Because y'all, the tax team, they're not fighting for us. They sure aren't. They're around here dismantling our government in front of our faces. And I'm not talking about commenting on the Facebooks, all right? That's all well and good, and I think it draws attention to things, just like I'm trying to do with my Sassy Attorney videos. But the reality is you need to go to city council. You need to hold people accountable at those public meetings. You need to read the minutes. And at the minimum, you need to start educating yourselves as to who they are, who pays their bills, who has been contributing to their campaign, who has volunteered for their campaign, and follow the money. Because the money's never going to lie. It sure isn't on any campaign. The money, that's where we live now in the United States. The money's never going to lie. You're going to be able to tell how they vote on something by looking at who paid to get them where they are. So my goal with this video and the videos I plan to release going forward, because we've got some really important primaries that are kicked off, and we need to really work together to get some of this corruption out of our local government. And the reality is that's going to be done with voting in primaries. That's going to be done with contributing to candidates who are running in primaries, volunteering your time for those candidates, and learning more about them. I love being sassy. I love being a little bit spicy, but my videos are with the goal of educating our electorate and being a watchdog to these elected officials who are putting in people who are not competent into power and who are making self-serving decisions that is in opposition to the best interests of our citizens. So it's time to be motivated, y'all. We got a lot of work ahead of us. The tax kings, they are working hard to dismantle our government, and we got to stop them. And just a reminder, in addition to being able to find the Sassy Attorney on TikTok, you can now find me on YouTube. So search me, Sassy Attorney, on YouTube. All right, y'all. It's time to do work. It's time. Let's go.